Oh shit. You know, in your head, it gets going good, but then when you try to speak words, it gets a little weird. Hello. 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 Should I write this out? Fucking glasses broke. Line of thought. Coffee, 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 'cause it is my nap time. My name is Addison and I like to enunciate. Alright, I gotta try to do this fast and good and hopefully comprehensive within a quick amount of time. I'm trying to use natural light, and this is the Pacific Northwest, so there's no telling how long that is going to last. My name is Addison, by the way, and it's been a long time since I have made any videos. Oh, I moved into a new place, by the way. It's pretty nice. Something happened this week. There was a release of a comic, and I could not pass up the opportunity to talk about it. It is the one-shot rebirth issue of The Hellblazer, which is the third reboot that DC Comics has done of the comic where Constantine is the main character, titular character. Originally, when DC first brought him over from Vertigo Comics, they put him in a comic just called Constantine, and it missed the mark. There's a lot of things you could go on about what they did wrong there and everything, but it obviously did not sit well with the audiences in general, and so they then rebooted it again as Constantine the Hellblazer, and again, I don't know, some people liked it a lot more. I myself thought they went way off the reservation with it, but they were trying something different, and I'll give them perks for that. That one overall I felt was just too pastel, and that's like in story and in art, very pastel. That's the best way I can explain it. And they took some liberties there as well, which I could again go on about. I only read the first issue of the Constantine the Hellblazer. The Ray Fox, the original series, lots of like really magic, like pow pow, I'm gonna throw a fireball magic, and that's just not John at all. Second one, I didn't read enough to tell you what was wrong with it. I was just aesthetically put off. However, now this is the third time they're doing it. They're rebooting it as The Hellblazer, and this is the Rebirth one-shot, so we haven't started the actual story. It's just kind of setting the scene for what's gonna happen down the road. The big thing that you're gonna notice with it is, right on the title, is that it is called The Hellblazer, getting back closer to the original Vertigo series, which was just called Hellblazer, I think. Just Hellblazer. I think they wrote anyway. I don't know why they have to call it The Hellblazer and just not call it Hellblazer. I guess it's probably because one of the first things that people are like start going through people's minds, even on the original Vertigo series, was that you would, what the hell's a Hellblazer? And people, if you Google it, go ahead and Google like what is a Hellblazer, what is the Hellblazer, why is it called the Hellblazer, and it's really nothing. I'm sure there's a reason. There is a reason, but ultimately, unless canonically someone else can find something, I'm not aware of any actual reason it's called Hellblazer. There's some kind of like weird half-assed attempts to like try to explain it, I think, in the past, or allude to it, but I don't think there's any actual reason for it. I just think this is John. He is the Hellblazer. He's a Hellblazer. Hellblazer is something unique unto John Constantine, and that just is what it is. So I guess putting the in front of it kind of gives them that ownership of the term Hellblazer, which is acceptable. Even the font, the typography of the way they did the title is very more similar to the original Vertigo series, which again, and I mean, typeface I think is probably the least important of the characteristics of the comic, and where the DC kind of like screwed up. and they're never going to get quite back on track, I think 100% to like what the Vertigo series was putting out, just because you can't do a lot of that same stuff in the main DC line, I don't think, because they censor out curse words in this, so, which is fine, I guess. It's just obnoxious. The problem with censoring is that it is obtrusive. I would almost prefer they didn't just swear at all in it, right? Because having it censored out is punches you in the face, right? And I think that if you can tell a good story without swearing, then you just don't need swearing. Swearing is good. It's good if it can add to the story, I guess, but if you're not going to have it, that's not really adding to it, is it? Anyway. Secondly, the big thing with this is the art. Again, deviating from the last reboot, which was very light and soft edges and everything like this is grittier, darker, and the overall design of the character is much better, more in line. The story itself, throughout the entire story, it kind of it does a good thing that when they first rebooted it as the Constantine title on the DC, the problem with it was, he's shooting fireballs, all this stuff, very magic heavy, and that's never really what, while Constantine took place in a world of magic, that's never been the thing that made John John. It was his cunning, his resourcefulness, his trickery, and that's in this. Again, that's the main plot of the story revolves around, yes, using magic, but the thing that ends up tying everything together is a trick. And on top of that, he brings a friend like unwillingly into the situation, that's John. God, I gotta take this off, it's so warm in here. Since this is just the reboot, the one-shot Rebirth issue, and they're just trying to give you an idea of what future stories are going to be like, they do a really good job of filling you in on John's past, the Demon Blood, talking about Astra, introducing Chaz, John's relationship with Chaz's wife, and they even bring in at the very end, they bring in Mercury, who is a character from one of the original story arcs, The Fear Machine, which I did not realize when I first read that. I was like, because she was a little girl then. Interesting, the one thing that did disappoint me at first when I was reading this was that they brought in Wonder Woman and Shazam and Swamp Thing for like 4 pages or so. And I was like, why we were bringing in, see, that was one of the problems with the first issue or first series when you guys came in. It was very superhero heavy, and that's just not what John Constantine is, no capes sort of situation. And so they did that, but Swamp Thing convinces Wonder Woman and Shazam to not interfere with what John is doing. And I'm hoping that is a metaphor for what the rest of the series is going to be like, that it's going to be hands off as far as capes and tights go. Oh! Which reminds me, actually, with the whole John coming over to DC Comics, I just read the first volume of Justice League Dark, and they actually did a great job of writing John in that series. And Justice League Dark, the whole story was really good. I actually liked it quite a bit, and I wish I had been reading it when it was coming out. So then I looked at who was writing it, and I'm like, oh man, they got one person to write John Constantine well. See, I keep switching back and forth, Constantine. But then I looked at who wrote the story, and it was Peter Milligan, who wrote like the last 50 or 60 issues, I think, of maybe 30, somewhere, a plethora. He was the last writer on Hellblazer before it switched to DC Comics, so it makes sense that he actually was able to write a good John Constantine. So, talking about this story specifically, what's going on here? So the story starts off with John explaining why John was originally kicked out of London, why he couldn't be in London. The previous 2 story arcs, he had been living in New York, and it was because he had been cursed and he couldn't go into London, otherwise he would die. And I don't know if how much they explain that or play that out, if it's just kind of like exposition in the previous stories, but they kind of show here what happened, and so John gets into shenanigans with the #1 soul collector for all of hell. And the one thing, it was something I really liked about the way that they drew this demon in this, was that he's drawn very similar to how they did all the demons in the Lucifer series, which was also a Vertigo title. Which was interesting. I kind of like that, even though I did not care for the interpretation of demons in Lucifer. It got a little weird. That was a weird book. Good, but a little weird. So John gets banished from London. If he enters London, his soul gets ripped out of his body, which is a very painful thing. He gets sick and boils and everything like that. So that's why he was living in New York. But with this rebirth, they wanted to bring him back to London because that's where legacy, all that Jeff Johns stuff. So they bring him back. So once he gets into London, obviously his soul starts getting ripped out from his body, he starts getting sick, all that stuff. And so he has to find a way to reverse the curse and such. So he ends up casting a spell which reverses the spell but spews it out onto every other person in London. So all of London starts getting its souls ripped out. And he ends up playing this game of chicken with this demon. Just waiting. He's like, well, you're going to have to collect all these souls. You're not going to be able to collect all these souls. Womp, womp, womp. And so the demon starts trying to make deals with him. He's like, okay, well, if you just do this, I'll give you Astra's soul back. If you just give me your soul, we'll call it even. It'll be good. Astra gets to go free. I know that's a big deal for you. And so John's sitting there. And then at the very end of the series, Mercury comes up. And she's a psychic, so she actually knows the demon's real name. John has just been calling him Laughing Boy because he doesn't know his name. As we all know, names have power, and you cannot perform a spell on someone if you don't know their true name, especially demons and spirits and all that. So so she gives him his actual name, and he's able to reverse the spell, and everything's fine and dandy in the end. It's good. Overall, I think that if they that's the story. So overall, my thoughts, art good, story good. I hope they keep the capes and the tights out of the storyline. And my favorite panel in the entire thing was this panel right here, where it's got the words hell just in the mouth. I like that it goes from a bubble into the actual mouth. And when I was reading this, I started it made me want to bite down on it myself. But yeah. So anyway, I was excited to read it. I'm excited to see where it's going. I'm glad. I really feel like DC may be getting something good here. Just wanted to try to do a quick video real quick. And there's that.